Okay.
Oh,
Is it
you'll
ready?
edit all
It's
sorts
running.
of things
Okay.
out, I assume.
Okay, so we're here with Michael Gourlie, who's in Alberta, and it's
Yes.
June 10th. So, Michael, maybe you can tell us about when and how you became an archivist.
When and how? Originally, I wanted to, or I seemed to be going along a history path. I had I would say, sort of an influential prof when I was an undergraduate, and he was talking about, in this coming, generational change, there'd be lots of positions for history profs, and it seemed to be my bent in terms of my interests. So, but as I, went further along, I realized I just didn't fit somehow. I didn't really write in an academic sense. I guess it's sort of that big picture kind of academic writing. I just couldn't do that. And in my undergraduate, I chose to do Canadian history, specifically British Columbia, because I'm from British Columbia. And I realized that I liked working with the records. I would go to the archives to do my papers, like, oh, this is, I'd find it very engaging, and then I don't know if I looked around and realized there are people who work here. They work here. And what exactly happened? The first archives job I had was at Okanagan College. They were doing a record survey of all things, and I saw this word archives on the on a directory. And I was like, oh, okay, that's sort of, I've been to archives before. What's up with that? So that's sort of how it was sort of a mixture of things. There was the history influence, but also the realization that archives existed and there were jobs. So.
And what was your education?
I BA in history from UVic. I'd done some years at Okanagan College. It was a university transfer program. That's where I sort of got the history thing going on, and that's what led me to go to UVic, because the Provincial Archives is in Victoria. So that's, if you're doing Canadian history, you want to do BC history, and the archives is right there. They have the university, it all sort of tied together. Mm-hmm. And so there was that, and then my master's at UBC, because I started in 1990, and that was the only full archival studies degree at that point. Because Manitoba, I think they just announced it, or it was very. I also have relatives in BC, so I wasn't gonna leave the province. I wasn't very adventurous that way.
Right. So how did you become involved with the ACA then?
It's interesting. I think my recollection is that George Brandak was president in the early 90s, and I think he did a presentation to our class, or something like that. There was some sort of presentation. I don't think it was as formal as it is now with the chapter structure. Mm-hmm. It might have been Terry Eastwood talking about, there's this association. I think I had joined provincially, like the Provincial Association, while I was at UVic, because I sort of knew this was my direction. Someone had suggested it, I think, that I join. So when I got to UBC, it's like, there's a national association, you should probably join as well. And I think I saved my first newsletter, because I think George wrote something on top, welcome to the association, George, or something. So so I hung on to that. It was sort of cute. So I think it was sort of that influence. There was that introduction at the graduate degree level.
So what was the ACA like when you first became involved?
When I first became involved, I have to admit I wasn't involved as much as an undergrad at the beginning, because because I think the conferences, I was always on the other side of the country whenever they held a conference. Of course, I'd get Archivary and we'd read it religiously, because there's always an article it's almost like as soon as you got it, you had to read it, because they'd be talking about it in class or something. Or you see that article by Terry Cook on us? It's like, oh yes, of course I'm going to read that. Or that. So it was mostly the journal that sort of tied us together.
So what was the first conference?
First conference was actually Edmonton. Funnily enough, that's where I live. Partly because I was. It was always on the other side of the country. Yes, I was. One year I worked in Ottawa, and then it was in Banff. It was just always in the wrong place. And then I did a lot of contract work, so there wasn't a lot of money to go to conferences or pretty much anything other than the Provincial Association, which usually held its meetings where I could get to. So it's when I got my full-time job at the Archives Society of Alberta that there was a professional development budget, and they encouraged me to go, because I was sort of a conduit for that professional development knowledge to the members who couldn't go. So that was their rationale. So it just happened that the first one I could go to was 2000 in Edmonton. I think the previous year I was moving or something the same weekend. I was so annoyed, because I'd finally had this budget to spend, and it's like, yeah, it's the same weekend you're moving, buddy. You can't you can't do that. It's like, so I would say I think I'd been on a couple of committees early on, like membership, like just as a member. I think I was chair briefly. that wasn't my finest moment as an ACA committee person. And then involved with the planning and priority, or is it planning priorities? Review and renewal, different, sort of the same thing. Review and renewal, we often met at planning and priorities, P&P. And so gradually became more and more involved as sort of I had the support from my association to become involved, and it sort of worked out. This year, I guess, I'm the program committee chair for 2010, so yes, I don't know what to expect. And like I was saying earlier, I'm just all jittery. Like, what's happening here? What's happening there? Is this going okay? And I just can't sit still.
But have you enjoyed it?
Oh yeah, no, it's been really good. And met a lot of good people, a lot of good colleagues. It's interesting. Every year you come to the conference and someone you maybe chatted with, they remember you, and you chat with them, and you sort of do the social event things, and it's good to build that network of colleagues that you can rely upon seeing every year at ACA, like, because you wouldn't see them necessarily for many years unless there was this sort of nexus point where they could come together and discuss issues of common interest, but also to interact and sort of build those networks either from a research perspective or a knowledge base kind of thing to share the knowledge. So yeah.
What would you say would be one of the most memorable events or activities that has happened at a conference?
Wow, let's see, memorable.
Good or bad?
Good or bad? I don't know. I think every conference has its own kind of particular flavor and interesting kind of thing. I tend to gravitate towards the social events because every host committee tries to make it really memorable. They try to like get the venue that no one else can get, or something like that. And this year it's George's Island, which I didn't get in on fast enough. So, which is okay. You gotta move. But I remember Toronto. I didn't get to go to it. See, it's a lot of stores. I didn't get to go to this, but the Arts and Letters Club. The sort of small tour of that. So yeah, I think every time they try to make it like give that flavor of the city and that historical element that appeals to us. So yeah, it's sort of a bit of a whirlwind, I must say. All these conferences, you go to enough of them, and it's like, well, when was that? Oh, it's that long ago. And, we had so much fun. Yeah,
so what would you say are some of the key players in the field?
Players in the field
that are meaningful to you.
Meaningful? I would say, the Terrys. Terry Cook, Terry Eastwood. Terry was my thesis supervisor at UBC, and we read a lot of Terry Cook. Who else? Heather McNeil. She wasn't one of my profs, but certainly she was sort of writing and doing her. I think she was working on her PhD. She just before her PhD, so she'd written a lot already, and it was sort of quite notable. Lou Chan, of course, the whole Diplomax thing. I used that as part of my thesis. So I'm trying to think at LAC. It's funny because I worked there as a summer student at the time when they had internships there, and mine was at LAC, and PA, NAC at that point. All these ACs, they just get their ACs sorted out. Anyway,
and which department?
Which department? I did two work terms. One as an undergraduate because I had a cooperative degree program at UVic, and the second was, and that one was in documentary art photography. So working with Joan Schwartz and who else?
Lily Colton?
Yes, she was a step above where I was working. So that was the first. Second one was in RG10 with Bruce Wilson. He was the manager, and then there were a few others sort of around me who was doing projects there. So yeah. Let me see. I had a comment about NAC, LAC working there. Oh, just walking down the halls, yes. Because of course you're a student, you read all these papers, and you walk down the hall. Oh, I've read that. He did that one. It was a very, I wouldn't say humbling, but certainly like, wow, these are the people who wrote it, and they're just sitting in their office just doing their regular archives work. But on top of that, they've done this article that is studied all across, all across Canada at that point, I guess, but certainly all across Canada now, and presumably around the world now that Archivaria is online, so they can all share that knowledge. So it's interesting.
And what would you like to see as kind of the end result, or maybe future direction for the ACA?
Future direction. Wow, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I would like it to be as collegial as it is now. It's a hard thing to say. I wouldn't say it's not inclusive, but certainly there's a certain type of archivist who tends to attend these kinds of events. So it would be nice if it was a broader kind of base, because certainly the provincial associations are very strong, and I think there's a lot of people at those levels who would feel welcome here and find a professional discussion that they'd be comfortable with, but I don't know why they don't go. Because I think certainly some of them have the budget, the time. I'm not sure why. I don't know if that's an answerable question, really. I think it might be just a realization on their part that, yeah, these it's not the big scary ACA. The discussions I have here are entirely relevant to my smaller archives, and that I should be part of those to bring my voice to the discussion.
Right.
So I don't know if that's really quite the...
Yeah,
but I think that's sort of, yeah.
No, that's true. How has technology changed your outlook as an archivist?
Oh, it's changing quite a bit. Just the nature of the archival networks, the databases being online. It's just a different world entirely. Like just the type of reference you can do, and the type of skill set the archivist has to have now. Because not only do you have to deal with more digital kinds of materials, which I'm not there yet, but certainly the reference side of things. All the tools you have, an online finding aid or descriptions, so you can link together fall that are split across the country, or fall that have direct relevance to each other yet are split. I teach the Archives Institute at the Archive Society, so we have to sort of explain to people how to use these tools to best advantage. So I've found examples where fall has been split at the Glenbow Archives, the BC Provincial Archives, the National Archives. It's all the same creator, but it's been split by circumstance. Or conversely, records that relate to Banff that are in Sackville, Brunswick, or Sackville, I don't know where, but it's like a teaching. It was nuns ran a hospital in Banff, and when they stopped running the hospital, they took the records with them back east. So you would never think to, I want to know about this hospital. Well, we've only got so much here in the community, so I don't know. But now you can just search online. It's like, oh, we have to go there. So it's much more accessible information, better service to researchers. I hear from archivists that the researchers walk in with printouts from the database, printouts from the finding aid. I'm looking for this file right here, so they use their time more effectively. It's become a more open and transparent kind of thing. Mm-hmm. They've still got a long ways to go, I think, in terms of having people understand the archival community and what we do on behalf of society. Maybe it's the full brand, what we do on behalf of society. I'd like to think we do something on behalf of society, but just that idea that it's much more open now, yet we still have that ways to go for people to understand. It's sometimes very frustrating.
So, is there anything else about ACA in particular that you'd like to say?
I don't know. I can't think of anything right now. It's sort of funny, just because I think there have been certain phases in the sort of ACA, and I hope you capture a chunk of them. Because certainly some of the earlier ones are going to be very difficult to capture. Not many of them still attend. They're retired. They're sort of like, I've done my bit for the archives, the Archives Association, the ACA. But the early conferences, I've heard lots of talk about the after parties and the hotel rooms and things like that. So those still go on. I don't think with quite the vigor, perhaps, that you hear about the past parties. But certainly,
a little bird told me that you were in a hotel room. And...
Well, we got this noise complaint. It's 11:30. There's just 4 of us. I mean, I was at the president's after party in Saskatchewan in 2005. And it was crazy. There were people sitting on the floors. It was just until, and I think someone said, I left about 2:30, I think. And someone, I guess an hour later, like they sort of pulled back the curtain. I think that's daylight out. I mean, it was just crazy. But it's the one time a year when we're all sort of together and we can sort of share experiences and share frustrations, come together as a community. And I think it's really important that we continue to do so. And I don't think there's anything that can really replace that in-person kind of discussion, connection, networking. So, and I hope ACA continues to do that, because a virtual ACA would just be, we just sit in front of our computers and talk. No, it just wouldn't work. I don't care how far technology evolves. We still have to meet once a year and talk.
That sounds good. Okay, thanks. Lovely.